Since 2009, we've shaved about $40 million off of what we build. $40 million is gone. Each quarter I do a report to the county commission on forecasting revenue, where we are and where we think we'll be for the year. And it's a common question. It's not so often anymore, but some of the county commissioners would ask, where did that $40 million go? Well, given that the last reappraisal was in 2009 and the next reappraisal will not be until 2013, a lot of property owners appealed their property values. They got a notice from the assessor that said your house is worth $100,000, and he said, not in this economy, it's really only worth $80,000. Well, if you were successful in your appeal and the value of your home was knocked down to $80,000, therefore your taxes went down, you owed less. And so coming into office, we knew that was going to happen. So I tried to focus on collections. And some of you may know, but each year we have about $50 million that goes delinquent, uncollectible. Not uncollectible, but just it goes delinquent. People who don't pay property tax. And so what we started to do was reach out and really try to uncover what we thought was the underlying problem. I spent a couple of years as a volunteer football coach down in the inner city. It was really a life-changing experience for me. Some of you may have seen the movie Undefeated about Manassas High School. I actually helped coach at Manassas for 2 years. I was there before the TV cameras showed up. But for me, I saw kids who were never exposed to financial education, never exposed to banking, were willing to work hard and earn a paycheck, but would have to take that paycheck to a convenience store to cash it and take in a $200 check and walk out with $175 because they paid $25 to cash their own check. So I saw all this and I was like, why in our community are we near the top of the list on consumer bankruptcies? You know, why are we near the top of the list in some of the delinquencies and some of the financial problems that we have nationwide? And so I felt like the underlying problem for many of these individuals within our community was that they've gone to school for 12 years to learn to work and get a job, but nobody's ever really taught them how to handle a paycheck. And so what we started doing with our delinquent taxpayers is offering a monthly workshop on basic budgeting, just financial education. You know, keep a 30-day diary, start tracking where all your money goes so that you can begin to get a handle on the income that you have. I firmly believe that if we're going to address the poverty within our community, and in the core city it may be 30%, countywide it may be closer to 25 to 27%, but if we're going to address the poverty, and some of it is generational poverty within our community, the only way to do that on a mass scale like this is wealth creation. It's not wealth transfer, it's wealth creation. And I think wealth creation, it has several components, but one is first of all a job. We've got to focus on jobs, and I know both the mayors and a lot of the suburban mayors are focused on what can we do to create an environment for jobs. Unfortunately, there's some within our community that there's no incentive to go to work, and I think we have to address that as well. I heard FedEx's economist speak yesterday. He said economics can be defined in one word, and it's incentives. And I think we have to rethink some of our incentives in terms of what are we motivating. But jobs is the first. That job has to be coupled with financial education. About 3 weeks ago, our state treasurer, David Lillard, who some of you may know, he's a Shelby County resident and a former Shelby County commissioner. He's now our state treasurer, and we're fortunate to have him. But he has a statewide initiative to get financial education into the classroom. He and I hosted a workshop for elementary school teachers at the University of Memphis about 3 weeks ago. We had 150 elementary school teachers show up who are willing to at least explore the idea of incorporating curriculum into the classroom on financial education, math problems that relate to, again, finance and money management. So that's extremely exciting. But our workshops that we host each month are targeted to our delinquent taxpayers. Instead of, the incentive for them is they're at risk at losing their house. One of the toughest jobs I have to do and the trustee's office has to do is a process known as tax sale. And it's a nice way of saying that we're going to sell your house because you're so delinquent on your taxes. So if a taxpayer gets 3 to 5 years or more delinquent on their property taxes, they're at risk of losing their house. Well, the county already owns 4,000 properties across the county. A lot of them are vacant lots inside the city of Memphis. But you've just turned, and forgive me, but my degree was in accounting, but you've just turned a potentially income-producing asset into a liability. Because no longer is it on the tax rolls, and not only that, somebody's picking up the phone saying, come cut this grass out here. And so you have to send staff out to cut the grass. So we don't need to add any more properties through the tax sale process. And when I meet at these workshops, I tell these delinquent taxpayers, 60% of our property tax budget goes to education. 60% goes to education. And if we have $50 million each year that goes delinquent, imagine what our education system would look like with $30 million more dollars going into our education system. 60% of $50 million is $30 million. So I'm going to stay away from schools because I think y'all heard a lot about it. But just imagine what our school system would look like if our delinquent taxpayers weren't delinquent, and not only weren't delinquent, but were paying. Because a lot of these folks I'm talking about are chronically delinquent. They're delinquent year after year after year. And so our Project Home Workshop is what we call them. We do them on Tuesday nights at a different community center where we try to target our delinquent taxpayers. And it's worked, our collection efforts. My first 2 years, full 2 years in office, I'm in my third year now, we've exceeded collection forecast with the county. The county has forecasted we'd collect X, we've actually collected more than X. First year in office, it was about $8 or $9 million. Second year in office, it was about $12 million. What that did is it allowed Mayor Luttrell and our county commission to pass a balanced budget with no tax increase those first 2 years. Not only that, it allowed Mayor Luttrell to knock $200 million down on our debt. When we came into office in 2010, countywide debt was about $1.8 billion. It's now down to about $1.6 billion. Not only that, our rainy day fund, our general fund's gone from about 20% of our revenue up to 25% of revenue. So from the county's perspective, our county financial health, government is improving. Debt's down, savings are up, okay? Now, back to how we're going to eliminate generational poverty. Job, financial education. The third would be also financial access. I think many of us take for granted that we have a bank nearby, and many times there's several banks nearby or credit unions. But for many within our community, they don't have financial access. You've heard about food deserts. There's a lot of banking deserts. A lot of folks who don't have access to low-cost savings accounts or checking accounts, and what you see is a dissipation of assets. And not only that, an inability to build assets within our community. Net worth, and I think that's the number we really need to focus on, is your assets, what you own, minus your liabilities, who you owe. And many within our community, they have a lot of liabilities in terms of who they owe, but they can't really build any assets. So Mayor Wharton and I recently launched an initiative a couple of weeks ago called Bank on Memphis. As the banker for the county, one of our responsibilities is not only to collect the taxes, but it's also to manage the cash. We'll have anywhere from $100 million on deposit at Regions Bank to maybe $10 million on deposit at a small community bank. Well, what we've done is we've asked those banks to partner with us and to create the products and services, get more involved in our financial education component, and begin to reach this unbanked within our community. It's been estimated that there's anywhere between or around 70 to 80,000 households within Shelby County who are unbanked or underbanked. And so we're trying to improve the access. But I think that's what we're going to have to do in terms of addressing the poverty problem is wealth creation. Jobs, of course, financial education, financial access. I was taught years ago by a gentleman that I worked for. He said, it's not how much you make, it's how much you keep. And so with that job and with that financial education, you hope that someone begins to save and build wealth. And through that wealth, long term, you will address the poverty issue. The challenge as an elected official, and I'm relatively new to this, but I'm learning that when I'm back on the campaign trail, that there's going to have to be a whole lot of sort of notches in my belt that I can say in 14, here's what we did. Unfortunately, my approach is a little bit different, and I refer to it as sleep, creep, and leap. A lot of these initiatives that we've launched are somewhat in the sleeper phase. It's too early to call them a success, although it's tempting to say they're successful. The next phase, once we sort of test the concept and prove it out, we'll take it up to the creep phase and then the leap phase. But I say that because a lot of the ground that we're plowing is old, hard, dried up dirt. My wife and I live on a small farm east of here, and I can remember when I first started my family garden years ago. The soil hadn't been worked. And I mean, I was out there, it was, I think, President's Day weekend a few years ago with my tiller and had it kind of strapped to me and holding on and just trying to bust up this hard dirt. Well, that's what we're doing from a financial perspective. Many within our community and communities across this county have really never had exposure to financial education. I think the initiatives that our state treasurer has launched statewide, coupled with some of our initiatives that we've had focused here, will begin to improve the financial health of our community. So I appreciate the opportunity to serve. I do plan to run for re-election in 2014 and would love your support on that. Reappraisals should go out in the next 45 days. Of course, that's a function of the assessor's office. Our office has forecasted revenue, and it's not pretty, but I've tried to be realistic and get ahead of it as much as possible. There was an op-ed piece written in the Commercial Appeal several months ago where we forecasted about a 5% decrease in the tax rolls. And I think y'all all understand the mechanics of how that works. The tax rolls go down, the certified tax rate goes up. Then, of course, and that's a topic I'll stay away from, but you've got the whole school budget. So you've got this perfect storm, as it's been described, of reappraisals countywide and the increasing cost of schools. But I can tell you, as the tax collector, we're trying to do everything we can to put the county in a good position, whether it's knocking our debt down or increasing our general fund balance, so that there is no tax increase for us in Shelby County. So again, I thank you for the opportunity to serve. I'll be happy to take any questions that you may have, and anything's fair game. Even though I've eliminated presence in schools, I'll be happy to answer questions on that. Yes, sir.
I just got a question. I'm just curious as far as collecting tax on business, I know some cities have trouble. Some of the businesses went behind, and if they were caught up, it would alleviate a lot of the budget.
Right. Everybody here's a question about taxes on large businesses.
No, didn't hear.
Yeah, in effect, it was how are our collection efforts with collecting taxes, particularly within the large big business segment. There's two taxes that we collect. One is the realty tax, which is the dirt in the ground that building may sit on. And the other is a personalty tax. It's the furniture, fixtures, and equipment in a business. And actually, the large businesses are good taxpayers. We ran an article a year or so ago highlighting some of our delinquent taxpayers, and there were some large companies that were in there for various reasons. They don't like that. I've referred to it internally as, Nick, I know you're filming this, but refer to it internally as kind of the wall of shame, this group of delinquent taxpayers. But actually, they pay pretty good on time. What I start to have a problem with is these pilots, the payment in lieu of taxes. It's an acronym, payment in lieu of taxes. These pilot programs, you'll see FedEx, International Paper was just awarded one. They're pretty savvy.
J.M. Smuckers.
I'm sorry?
J.M. Smuckers.
Right. Yeah, I mean, a lot of the larger businesses will hire attorneys and go appeal to the IDB, which is now called EDGE, the Economic Development Growth Engine, and appeal to have their property taxes reduced. Just to throw a little red meat out there along those lines, our office bills the pilots. We don't design the contracts. We don't come up with all the sweeteners, but once they nail it down, our office is the one that's responsible for billing those. So in looking at that, the county abates or writes off about $50 million in property tax related to these pilots. Well, the personalty tax that I was referring to earlier, the furniture and fixtures, we bill countywide about $57 million. All right. So if you think about it, there's a few companies that can hire attorneys that can not work the system, but can say the things they need to say in terms of job creation and have $50 million of property tax abated, go away. Well, what if we eliminated the personalty tax altogether? It would help 30,000 businesses countywide, and from a dollar amount perspective, we'd only be giving up about $7 million. So either we can help a few with 50 million, or we can help all with 57 million. So looking at things of ways of what can we do in terms of leveling the playing ground for all businesses. I think one of the roles, and I'm going to use my gardening analogy again, I think one of the roles of elected officials is to create an environment where you as a family want to plant and grow, and you and your business want to plant and grow. And so, there's sometimes when you work the soil that there's certain additives that you have to add to replenish, and so we've got to improve our small business and our business climate here in Shelby County. Statewide, Tennessee actually ranks very high in a business-friendly state, statewide. Shelby County, we've got to have more activity in terms of job creation, entrepreneurship, and things like that. So I know I took your question and opened it up, but appreciate the question. Yes.
How do you think my job as a Facebook creator has really promoted Memphis and Shelby County? I have several websites up called Nicholas the Governor Pegues and Victorian Village the Mayor. And I notice I have a lot of people from around the world who are my Facebook friends, such as members of Parliament in England. And where my main goal is to promote Memphis from an international perspective.
Right.
And I became aware yesterday that they're trying to bring the Olympics here to Memphis.
I was going to ask, is that part of your efforts?
Well, it could very well tie into that. But I noticed that Memphis was lacking international viewpoints, so I became a CNN journalist, as you know, CNN Student News, and I'm trying to promote Memphis from an international perspective. And
I applaud your efforts, and we all need to kind of take a page out of your playbook and do more of it. I think when I was playing football at the University of Alabama, I had a coach that called it the Fellowship of the Miserable. It was hot, summer workouts. We were about to start 2-a-days, and you'd get a group of people sitting around the locker room going, "Oh, it's awful today. It's going to be so hot out there today." And it would just begin to suck the energy out of the room. And you'd go out to practice lethargic and distracted and have a terrible practice. And I think there's a trap that we all face, living in Memphis and Shelby County, is this fellowship of the miserable, of things are not good and crime is bad. And we've got a lot of positive things going on in Memphis and Shelby County. I'm wired to be optimistic, and I try not, but at the same time I try to be realistic. Whether it's job creation, the things that are going on, the financial health, I'm a big proponent in that. If you look at this downdraft we've had in the economy, banks and everybody are flocking to people who have strong balance sheets and strong credit reports. Statewide, our pension fund is in good shape. Shelby County, our pension fund is in good shape. We've knocked our debt down. We've increased our savings our general fund. So there, from a financial perspective, there are a lot of good things. Not going to skirt around the issues. Obviously, education has to be figured out. My economic philosophy is more based on value. People don't mind spending the money if they think they're getting something in return. And I think where it's going through right now is a lot of folks say, I'm tired of spending the money and this is what I get in terms of the product in return. So, anything we can do to further promote our city, our music heritage, I think is great. It needs to be told more worldwide. The Blues Hall of Fame is here. It's the national organization. Most folks don't know that, but when they have their blues events, incredible blues performers descend on the city of Memphis. I think that's something that we can promote more. Certainly our medical community with St. Jude, La Bonner, UT Memphis,
Temper Israel.
Right.
We can promote Israel.
I mean, there's so many good things that I think we have to look at our strengths and not forget about our weakness, because we have to take our strengths and just begin to build on top of those strengths. And the other one is obviously the transportation or the mobility. We got to further leverage that. Yes, sir.
Dave, you were somewhat reticent when you were talking about the pilots, as I sensed. The derivative spin out economically of those pilots. Is there a model incubation engine out here that can be used to tell the people what this derivative benefit is to the people more readily than it is to be beat over the head like it was something negative when it's not really negative? Those derivatives will continue to come so long as those industries come in here and spends these dollars through our economy.
Yes, I want to make sure I understand your question. If I get off track, stop me. But sometimes I think we're our own worst enemy in that we award these pilots. The pilots are awarded with an expectation. The company says we're going to come in, we'll create 50 jobs, and the average salary is going to be $35,000 a year. And that's great. Everybody pops the champagne, inks the deal, and move on to the next one. Well, unfortunately, there's been very little in terms of compliance with those follow-up. Did the company a year from now? And in these contracts, they're very specific. Year one will do this. Year two will do this. And that's what we've hammered on. And again, that's outside the bailiwick of my office. It's just the bill and collect. EDGE, the Economic Development Growth Engine, their office is responsible for the compliance of those contracts. And there's clawback provisions. But rarely do we see these clawback provisions kicked in. And we've got a fairly well-known large suburban company that's actually delinquent right now on their pilot. And we're trying to work it out with them, but there does need to be more accountability, and it's getting there.
Are all of those individually negotiated?
Yes.
Okay, so the pilot, and I think we read these things in the newspaper and we don't even know what a pilot is.
You're right.
And we don't know how that performs or what it's supposed to do. I think that's what
Right.
Ray's saying. So, what do we collect from that? And you're saying, if I hear you correctly, that no one's really been following up on whether these companies are going to do this the first year or the second year and hire those people.
Yeah, that never and always are big words, so I try to stay away from those. But rarely is compliance followed up upon. And
is there an effort to do that?
I'm sorry?
Is there an effort?
Oh,
to
yeah,
do
yeah.
that now?
That's what I'm saying. We had a powwow back in early December with some of the county commissioners, some of Mayor Luttrell's administration, EDGE folks, this Economic Development Growth Engine, my office, and the assessor's office, because we're all involved in this process in some form or fashion. We had a real heart-to-heart to say there needs to be more work done in this area, and the outcome was, one, the front-end documentation, because a lot of the pilots our office sometimes is not even made aware of, and by the time we get them, they're already delinquent. So front end just reporting, and then the back end really the compliance component. And so there's a lot of work going on to solve that, because back in these incentives that we have to create, there may be a place for pilots. but I'm a fan of pilots only if there is accountability for those pilots. Yes.
Just this week, my Facebook said that the state,
Right.
they had the 65 charges. Did they get any?
Yes.
Yes, they did.
Yes. Yes.
I'm familiar with one problem that you addressed,
Okay.
which is there is a community of residents, Memphis Towers and Port Avenue, and I have a relative who lives there. Every time he gets a check, he has to pay $5 to get it cashed. Also, he has a problem getting there because he does not have a car.
Right.
The people I see there, at least 20, 30, 40, 50 residents on wheelchairs. How do they get to cash their checks? You know, none of them. So it occurs to me there's mobile libraries, there's no mobile screening, there should be mobile banking.
Yes.
That would be a solution to that problem.
And that's some of what we're talking about. We've got a great group of partner banks from kind of the big three regions, SunTrust and First Tennessee, and also Bank of America, but also a lot of the community banks and credit unions. And there are some regulatory issues that get involved. Like they couldn't show up here one day and said, SunTrust couldn't show up here and say, we're going to open up accounts for everybody, because regulators would see this as a branch. And so there's some challenges, but that's what we've asked the banking community to do, is to partner with us and help us solve the problem of bank deserts, not just within the areas that we can maybe that come to top of mind, but even areas like you're talking about, a senior living facility. I know some will have a bank that will show up, say every Tuesday, you know, on a routine schedule. They're not there every day, but you know the citizens know, right?
They're not going to build a branch there.
Right,
So.
right.
But as a follow-up, so of course, you know, I helped this relative to establish a checking account, but he couldn't handle it, and
Right.
that is also a problem.
Right.
So it would be really not helping them in that regard, some amount of help, but just to let him cash a check for $1 fee instead of $5
Right.
or more.
Well, and through the Bank on Memphis initiative, that's what we've asked the banks, is not only be financial partners with us and contribute some money, but also create products and services, low-cost checking and savings accounts. You know, I was looking at an advertisement the other day, and they said it's a low initial minimum to open, and it was like $1,000. Well, $1,000 may not be low for everybody. So we've asked some of these banks to create a low initial minimum to open of maybe $100 or $50. Take all the hurdles that are out there and just knock them down or eliminate the ones that you can eliminate.
But and what you say about financial education is really
Right.
interesting.
Yeah, and I've been a huge proponent of that, because as I've told them, when Bank On was initially launched softly several years ago, there was this goal: we want to open up 5,000 accounts. And I think the motivations were wrong. Maybe so somebody could come out and say, "Hey, community, we opened up 5,000 accounts." But the attrition rate, the turnover rate with those 5,000 would be extremely high, because they would open an account, they'd be hit with insufficient fund charges, they couldn't manage their money, they would get an extremely bad taste in their mouth. They already had a bad taste, they'd get a very bad taste in the mouth about the whole banking system, and they're gone forever. And so it has to be coupled with financial education, helping people, and that's why I'm pleased with what Treasurer Lillard's doing, grabbing our kids early and consistently, because education is a process. We're trying to catch that group that's outside through our Project Home workshops, but it's we got to catch them all. So, yes, sir.
David, I talked to you out at the Ag Center when you were running for office, and you outlined a few things you wanted to do, and you've done it.
Well, thank you.
And or you're working on it, I should say. But in our county and our city, why don't we see nice write-up in our paper and our news media about what David Ramirez doing? Why do we always get the dead man on a horse issue or something? And we've got so many positive things here in this county and city that we could absolutely take and run with it. Graceland is an international thing.
Right.
If we could just take it and get politics aside, everybody gets to work. And I want to know why that we can't get people like David working in our whole system.
Yeah.
We don't know, you sit down and talk to Mark Lutton. Mark can outline what y'all are doing. The average person in this county don't know that.
Right.
Well, this is one of the objectives of this club,
Right.
and why I wanted. How many have heard what David is doing? Probably haven't. And this is a great opportunity that we have. And David, again, thank you so much for coming to this meeting today, because we need to have every one of us to tell your friends and neighbors. We ought to have this place filled to hear a guy like this talk, so that we would get out this information to people. It goes beyond. He's going beyond his job description. Is what he's doing. And I think that's very remarkable.
May I ask one more question? Okay, so senior citizens, they get their taxes frozen.
Right.
However, what happens if taxes actually go down? Are they frozen at the higher rate?
Sure, absolutely. No, I'm teasing.
I
No,
There's a
there's,
stand-up comedy
Yeah.
too, right?
I write them a personal thank you note. That's what we do. No, of course they can reapply each year if rates go down. I love the way you're thinking. If rates go down,
Well, I read your brochure.
oh yeah, that's right. Yeah, but no, let me respond and then I'll close. Actually, I think the media has been very gracious and good to me and some of the initiatives. They wrote about our Bank on Memphis program a couple of weeks ago, and have covered that. And so the media's at least for some of the things that we've done within the trustee's office, they've been very gracious and kind. As far as some of the other components of what was said, I read a Truett Cathy book. Everybody know who Truett Cathy is? The founder of Chick-fil-A. Truett Cathy wrote a book, and in his book he puts a little riddle. He says, three frogs are sitting on a log. 3 frogs are sitting on a log. 2 decided to jump. How many are left?
Well, they haven't really jumped yet. They have decided to jump.
Very good.
Decided, that's all.
That's right. And so when you talk about what can we do, I mean, I did it a few years ago. Others have done it, but I think we all need to do. Where is it we need to jump in and get involved? If you can play the guitar, you're looking at a guy who's struggling to learn to play the guitar. Go teach somebody how to play the guitar. Another book I read was if you want to walk on water, you got to get out of the boat. Of course, the boat represents our comfort zone. Go teach guitar to somebody that may not look like you, or you may not have a whole lot in common. I think that's where life change begins to take place. It's not in the Good Samaritan who passes by and says, here's a turkey on Thanksgiving. But I think life change happens when we begin to build relationships and share life shoulder to shoulder. So I would encourage you to jump off the log and get out of the boat. So, because there are good things within our community.
One quick question. You mentioned,
I mentioned what?
your relationship with the state.
Oh, right.
Do you have any mandates or anything from the state that give you problems?
Oh. Actually, none. I'd like some more time to think about that, but none that really come to mind. We are exploring this idea of doing away with the personality tax. I think it may be, I'm not sure if it's a constitutional issue or a statute issue, but we haven't spent a whole lot of time, because I don't think the timing is right for that, just given our economy. I'd love to float it out, but now's not the right time. But the short answer is no, not that I'm aware of, but I would like some more time to simmer on that question. So, Jim, thank you again. I appreciate it.
Thank you
Mom,
for
thanks
coming.
being here.
Happy birthday,
Happy
Juan.
birthday. 35th.
Yeah. We're glad. I think we've all learned something today. I know I've sure learned something from what David had to say. One of the things that I learned is that they play football at Alabama. And glad to find that out. That's great. But yeah, they've been last 2 years.